following program is exclusively produced and distributed by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc., all rights reserved.
Hi, Golden Age film fanatics, and welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. My name is Dick Dinman, and our goal is to become your exclusive guide to the very best of the Golden Age classics coming out on DVD. We'll have reviews, breaking news of upcoming releases, plenty of surprise guests, and a special feature devoted to the great Golden Age film composers, which we call Cinemusic. So let's turn on the marquee and lights, camera, action.
It's time for Dick's Picks, in which I get to shine the spotlight on one of my Dick's Picks of the week. Our friends at Kino Lorber'S Home Entertainment have just released the 15th of their highly sought-after film noir collections, which at this juncture means that a total of 45 classic film noir titles, starring such noir notables as Barbara Stanwyck, Vincent Price, Edmund O'Brien, Richard Conte, Colleen Gray, John Garfield, James Mason, Frederick March, Shelley Winters, Charles Boyer, Tony Curtis, Jeff Chandler, and Orson Welles have been released by this popular home video outlet thus far. And I'm happy to say much more to come. All 15 of Kino Lorber'S critically acclaimed film noir collections are now available to the delight of film noir connoisseurs everywhere, even as we speak. Stay tuned for more Dick's Picks, coming up on DVD Classics Corner on the Air very soon. And to help me salute Kino Lorber'S film noir collections is no less than popular journalist, columnist, film historian, commentator, and film noir maven, David Del Valle. David Del Valle, welcome back to DVD Classics Corner on the Air on a very special occasion, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Kino Lorber film noir collections. Now, so far, there have been 15 collections. 45 film noirs have been released in these collections. Obviously, we can't do a show about all 45.
We'd be here all day.
We'd be here all day.
The next day, yeah.
So what we're going to do, and I don't know what David's picks are, and he doesn't know what mine are, and what we're going to do is choose 3 each of our favorite of all of these great classics. And just because just because we're choosing these 3 doesn't mean that there aren't so many other great titles to choose from. And I had a real problem. I came up with 12 titles, then I tried to whittle it down to 9, then 6. Anyway, enough. David, you're the guest.
My friend.
You get to choose your first choice. What would it be?
Okay. Well, what I would like to say, Dick, and I don't know if this is your situation as well, but the marvelous thing about Kino's, selections is even though you and I combined have seen a lot of movies in our lifetime, I'm really amazed at some of the discoveries, some of the little gems that I didn't know existed.
Indeed.
Truly. And
Yeah.
I've been going to Eddie Muller's Noir City for a long time, so I've seen a lot of noir, but there's so much. And, of course, now the term film noir is kind of inclusive of other things. I just did a thing on Leave Her to Heaven, which is what we call a sunny noir, because all the mayhem takes place in the daylight.
Yeah.
But So you want to know my first choice?
Yes.
All right, my first choice, because I had never had an opportunity to really watch it until this set, is The Tattered Dress, directed by the great Jack Arnold, and starring Jeff Chandler, whom I've come to know intimately from multiple screenings of Female on the Beach with the fabulous Joan Crawford, Jeannie Crane, of course, Makowitz's Letter to Three Wives, Jack Carson, Gail Russell from The Uninvited, and Elaine Stewart. This is a courtroom drama that also has one of the great Jack Arnold kind of introductions, because it's a marvelous prologue where there's no dialogue. It's just all action. And it propels the rest of the story. And it wouldn't necessarily, to me, be a quintessential film noir, but it's certainly there. And it's a CinemaScope film, and this was done right around the same time of The Incredible Shrinking Man, which is, of course, what Jack Arnold is best remembered for. And also in the noir series, which is very interesting, Man in the Shadow with Orson Welles and Jeff Chandler.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And Jeff Chandler, to me, my mother loved Jeff Chandler, and so I was introduced to him when I was still in elementary school.
Yeah.
So Jeff Chandler my mother was so taken, I guess most women were in the 50s, with him having that prematurely gray hair, which on him looked fabulous. And there's a movie called Foxfire with Jane Russell, which is worth watching just for the Technicolor.
Yeah.
Never mind that there's a story. But so that was my first choice. And
well, it's a good choice, and I have to tell you, that was one of the films that was on my potential list. The thing that's most remarkable to me in this in The Tattered Dress is actually Gail Russell's performance, which I think is the best thing she's ever done. Some of her scenes, I didn't even know she was capable of doing them. And,
well, of course.
And she was marvelous in it. And I think this may be Jeff Chandler's, I would rate it with Merrill's Marauders, possibly as two of Jeff Chandler's best performances. His monologue at the end in Trial is probably the best scene he's ever had the opportunity to do. So I totally empathize with your choice, even though it didn't make my list. And I will tell you now, my choice, the first choice on this show, would be a film called The Sleeping City, which is a semi-documentary style film noir set and filmed in New York's Bellevue Hospital, and unusual for Universal, a practice which they would not continue into the middle to late 50s, entirely shot on location. And for me, it stars two great noir individuals, Richard Conte and Colleen Gray. And
oh, yeah.
I think it's I had to choose something of Richard Conte. Very close came The Raging Tide with Richard Conte and Shelley Winters, but I think The Sleeping City is a much better film. Based on the title, I think that Universal was gearing this to the Naked City crowd. That film had been such a blockbuster when it came out a few years before. So I love The Sleeping City, and that would be one of my three choices. Now, let's go to your next choice, David.
Okay. And I want to tell you, Richard Conte, I adore in The Big Combo.
That's my favorite Conte performance, Mr. Brown.
It's absolutely without peer. And we were just talking about Cornell Wilde the other day for Leave Her to Heaven. And, of course, Cornell, that's one of his favorite movies,
Yeah.
and it's with his wife, Jean Wallace.
Yeah.
But anyway, my second choice, because I thought on the set that I have one of these, of the two sets that just came out that both have my George Naders on it, there was this movie called One Way Street with James Mason and Dan Duryea and Marta Torres. I had never heard of it. I didn't know Mason made one of these, to be honest, because it's one of those titles, like I always tell Eddie Muller, that where did this come from? And anything with Mason, of course, is eminently watchable, and this is no exception. I must say, what really took me aback a bit is because this movie goes back to Mexico and then back, of course, to L.A., and what better place to end a film noir than in Los Angeles, especially in this period.
Yeah.
And so, it was, it was unlikely casting, because one thing about Mason is his sophistication and his particular style is so grandiose in some cases, although I've seen him stretch and play, of course, all kinds of characters. But in this period, when he was younger, I wouldn't have cast him in this particularly.
Yeah.
I would have probably gotten somebody like Steve Cochran.
Right. Why
you
not?
know, in fact, I would have put Steve Cochran in all of these, but then that's a whole other story, right?
Right.
But Dan Duryea, too, I got to meet his son at a book signing because my friend Mike Peros wrote a book about Dan Duryea, which is wonderful, and also he did one on Jose Ferrer. And so Dan Duryea is, of course, an icon in film noir, and especially the two he made with Fritz Lang, with Joan Bennett, which are legendary.
Well, it's a very good choice, David. This was one of 3 or 4 films James Mason made upon his arriving in America. And for 2 years, he didn't work at all because there were all kinds of lawsuits from J. Arthur Rank. And this was one of a series of 3 or 4 films that didn't do well at the box office, but at least got him started in American cinema. And it's a great choice. And my next choice would be He Ran All the Way. Now, this is a 1951 United States crime drama directed by blacklisted John Berry, written by blacklisted Dalton Trumbo, photographed by James Wong Howe, scored by Franz Waxman, and starring a whole bunch of actors who were forced out of the business by the House of Un-American Activities. John Garfield, in his very last role, is, to my mind, absolutely great. His chemistry with Shelley Winters is perfect. Selina Royal is also in it, and she, the brilliant character actress, was also about to be blacklisted. But I like the film. It's a very compact, strong film about a criminal who takes over his girlfriend's family's apartment and causes havoc. And it's just brilliantly acted. Unfortunately, it was John Garfield's very last film. He died about a year later at 39 of a heart attack. So this film has a lot of history behind it, and I couldn't not include it on my list. So that's...
Well, that's amazing. Well, you know, I would not want a list without Garfield on it, because he was such a force, wasn't he, Dick?
Oh,
I mean,
my God. I think my... he never phoned it in. Never. I think my favorite Garfield movie would probably have to be Michael Curtiz's The Breaking Point, which he did a few years prior to He Ran All the Way. But any opportunity to see John Garfield is, for me, a golden opportunity, and that's essentially why I chose it.
I thank Joan Crawford for introducing me to John Garfield, because the first Garfield performance I ever saw as a kid was his violinist in the very overheated Humoresque.
Right.
Which, he has great lines. Like at one point he looks at Joan Crawford's socialite and says, you drink too much.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's a tremendous film. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I adore all that
Right.
stuff as you do. But no, Garfield's definitely top on the list.
Well, we're going to go to a station break, after which we'll be right back with David Del Valle.
We pause now for station identification.
DVD Classics Corner on the Air is exclusively produced and released by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc. All rights reserved. And we're back with David Del Valle. And David, what is your final choice for the top 3 titles?
Well, with full disclosure, my third choice is one that I did the audio commentary with my friend, filmmaker David Dakota, and that would be the George Nader starrer Man Afraid, which is one of those Universal International black and white, usually in CinemaScope, semi-police procedural, perhaps part melodrama, and now in the 21st century film noir.
Huh.
And so Man Afraid was a movie that all these choices I'm making, Dick, are movies that I'm being introduced to for the first time.
Yeah.
So that was my criteria a bit, was like, my, let's put some light on some of these movies that if it weren't for Kino Lorber, we just wouldn't have them in this beautiful presentation.
Right.
But now, Man Afraid, okay, now I've done a few now George Nader movies. So I feel like I know the guy, right? And so Man Afraid stretches what we know of his capabilities as an actor, because he's playing a priest. Now, in Appointment with the Shadow, which I also did the commentary for, he's playing an alcoholic. These parts were not written for him. And I also would wonder, going back to the tattered dress, I wonder who that was originally supposed to be. I bet you Jeff Chandler may not have been the first choice for that. If I could delve more into Universal International records and stuff, like, John Gavin started in The Female Animal, also with George.
Yeah.
And George replaced him because Hetty and John didn't have whatever it was they needed to have.
Yeah.
But back to Man Afraid. And this is another thing, too, because the monster kid in me had to come out with this. There's a character actor in Man Afraid named Edward Franz. Edward Franz. Mm-hmm. And Edward Franz was in a movie back in the 50s when I was a little boy watching horror movies called The Four Skulls of Jonathan Drake,
right.
which also stars the fabulous Henry Daniell from Robert Wise's The Body Snatcher and Camille. Yeah. Fabulous actor, George Cukor's great friend.
Right.
And so when I saw Edward Franz in this, he goes through the movie, Dick, in a kind of catatonic state. And it's I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I found this not only to be because now I've seen every aspect of George Nader, I think, and on the commentary I very candidly said that George, at this point in his contract with Universal International, knew that it was over in the sense of him getting roles that were going to make him like Rock Hudson, his dear friend Rock Hudson, or even John Gavin at that point.
Right.
He was getting roles that were being used that other people didn't want to do.
Yeah.
So he wisely, decided to reinvent himself in the same manner that Clint Eastwood did and a lot of other Lee Van Cleef. He went to Europe, he went to Germany, and he, is very successful doing a series of kind of low-budget spy dramas called Jerry Cotton. And, George was fine. And people always remember him, unfortunately, for a movie we were talking about earlier, Robot Monster, which, of course, is beyond criticism because this is one of those movies that just is.
Well, we'll get to that. I do want to do a special feature in a few minutes on Robot Monster. But I have to tell you that your choice surprises me. I mean, from where I come from, Man Afraid is it didn't even come close to making my list, and I did want to include a George Nader title, and you probably won't be surprised that my George Nader title choice is Appointment with a Shadow, which I think is a vastly superior film to A Man Afraid. I mean, and the reason I'm choosing it is because Appointment with a Shadow has the bones of an A-list film. I think the screenplay is unusually well thought out. I think the performances are fine. For me, Appointment with a Shadow is far more challenging for George Nader in playing an alcoholic, which he does very well. And I know that originally the film was thought of for Van Heflin, then Jeffrey Hunter, who apparently did 6 days filming and then had hepatitis and was replaced.
Didn't I do the audio commentary on
Yes,
that
you
one?
did.
I did. I think I did.
Yes,
Now,
you did.
I chose Man Afraid, frankly, Dick, full disclosure here, because it's funnier than Appointment with a Shadow. I had more fun watching it, and I, of course, did both of them back to back, as it were.
Yeah.
But you see, also, the reason also I chose my titles was for their obscurity in a way. And because I'd never seen them. But I like both movies. I think that they both showed that George was a better actor than people gave him credit for.
And how?
Yeah, because we're both talking about two very distinct kind of performances, playing a blind man, playing an alcoholic, playing all the different characters he finally played when his contract was up at Universal. How would you rank him with John Gavin in terms of the fact that Gavin had a very different career?
Look, I am not a John Gavin fan. I think he's a walking lumberyard. He's very stiff to me. He has none of the sense of humor or appeal of Rock Hudson. He's sort of like maybe George Brent, except I think Brent had a much wider range. So
Brent was more down to earth a bit too.
Yeah,
he had more of a Betty Davis adored him,
right,
with good reason.
Right.
And they made a number of pictures there. But Gavin, for the luck of the draw, Dick, was in so many high-profile movies like Spartacus that you just wonder why wasn't that all these other guys that were at Universal International at that time.
Yeah.
And there are a number of them that are kind of obscure, like the guy William Marshall.
Yeah.
Or even David. I think Richard Long was under contract too.
Oh, sure.
Along with Rock Hudson and so many others. But
let me ask you something. Let me ask you something, David. And I don't think he has, but has George Nader ever played a heavy? Or was that exclusively oily Ray Denton's?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever has. I'm not definitive on this, but maybe if any of these actors did unusual roles, it was usually on television.
Yeah.
And we're just now, thanks to YouTube, getting a chance to see, like Peter Lorre in Casino Royale with Barry Nelson
Right.
and James Bond. Who knew about that? I mean, of course, that's one of the better known ones.
Yeah.
But there's some others like Tuesday Weld in The Legend of Lila Claire. I've been watching the Robert Aldrich one with Ken Novak forever since it came out.
Yeah.
I did not know until the last couple of years that it had been done prior to that with Tuesday Weld. Now, I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a Boris Karloff Rasputin that's out there somewhere that was a TV drama. But as far as George Nader goes, no, and you know what? I do believe that he was one of these guys that always thought of himself as a leading man.
Yeah. Well,
And then character acting was like, when he went to Germany, he was still playing leading man kind of spy drama stuff.
Sure.
So, but you know what? I do believe that sometimes a leading man can really turn in. Look at Henry Fonda and Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West. Henry Fonda changed his entire persona.
Well, speaking of George Brent, remember the spiral staircase?
Vividly. That is Ethel Barrymore. Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Oh, my God. They remade it with John Philip Law, and it's watchable, but it's, Robert Siodmak was a tremendous director.
My favorite.
If you want to look at any of the second-tier Universal horrors, go no further than Son of Dracula. Son of Dracula, even though for years, and me growing up as a monster kid, everybody, kind of put Lon Chaney Jr.'s Dracula down because he was just not the kind. But aside from that, the movie itself is almost poetry because it ends on a bleak note that was almost impossible in the war years, and yet there it is. And Louise Val Britton in a black wig, she was doing Elvira, honey, before Elvira. And but Siodmak has I love his work.
I do too. I did want to mention before we leave Kino Lorber Film Noir collections that the title that came closest to being on my as one of my three choices, this may surprise you, was The Lady Gambles, because who does not want to see Barbara Stanwyck suffer? And suffer she does. It's
her birthday, or it was just her birthday.
Yes, yeah.
Happy birthday, Barbara Stanwyck. My friend Stan Schaefer adores her, so Stan, it's for you, baby,
Well, I have to say this to our audience, that the fact that we've only chosen really 6 titles is not a negative.
We could choose 6 a week,
Yeah, this Kino Lorber Film Noir collection is just marvelous. So far, 45 titles. They've already announced more to come, and some great titles included in their future. So both David and I, if you'll allow me to speak for you, David, thoroughly endorse the Kino Lorber Film Noir collection. You can't go wrong with any of these 15 collections.
They're essential.
They're essential is the perfect word. Also essential, and talk about an awkward segue, is another George Nader classic, supposedly one of his first, if not the first, a film made in 3D called Robot Monster. And I have to say, this is the greatest film ever made for $16,000.
Or one of them.
One of them. I mean, this is a marvelous film. And how can you, David, or I resist that wonderful, carefully thought out monster with the half gorilla suit and the diving bell and the TV antennas? I was shivering in my shoes.
Well, don't forget the bubble machine.
And the bubble machine.
I mean, honest to God, this bubble machine is like
this is the perfect film. I had 3 friends over. We got totally... Well, anyway, we weren't in great condition, and we just roared all the way through this, which brings me...
Well, I'll tell you who was in mint condition in Robot Monsters, Mr. George Nader, who
And
takes
how?
his shirt off on cue, and
Yeah.
it's developed a real gay following because of that, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
But I think Bronson Cave may be the real star of
Yes.
that movie. Who knows?
And I think it's time to acknowledge the terrific 3D archive. Fellows, Bob Furmanek and team are responsible for the restoration of so many 3D classics in the most optimal shape. And
I did the Kaza, son of Kochi for Kino in 3D. And we had the process in that was phenomenal, and it really brought that movie out.
Whoa, is that a gorgeous transfer?
It's gorgeous, Dick. And you've seen it. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
You have to own these because it's the only way to make sure you preserve them.
Exactly.
They're not always going to be around. Kino is doing what is almost an archaeological kind of thing. I mean, I've done titles for them like The Double Door that would have been in through the cracks, but they rescued it, and now we can enjoy it forever. It's just marvelous, you know, and I know you agree.
I totally agree. And before we run out of time, which we are almost in the process of doing, I want to ask you, David, what mischief you've been up to. Well, don't go into detail, but just what have you done lately?
Well, I've been in a couple of documentaries that are making the circuit. One, the Robert Englund documentary, Nightmares and Icons. They've changed the title a couple of times, but it's a definitive biographical record of Robert Englund, the Freddy Krueger of Nightmare on Elm Street. Then I just did Studio One Forever, which is a terrific documentary about a nightclub disco in Los Angeles that was comparable to Studio 54 in New York. And I was a patron of that, and now I'm an on-camera kind of voice remembering. It's very poignant in places. But most importantly, Dick Dinman, I have just finished my third volume for Bear Manor Media, a little different from my first two books, Lost Horizons Beneath the Hollywood Sign and Six Reels Under. This is a more autobiographical take called I Will Survive by David Del Valle. And in it, I describe my journey from New York to San Francisco to Los Angeles. And it's rather naughty, but I hope immensely readable. And I want to thank Ben Omar at Bear Manor for being the man who believed in me, has made it all possible for me to expound on the past. So
well, I have absolutely no problems with naughty. So,
well, that is a relief in the first place.
David.
Remember, the Carpetbaggers is coming.
Oh, yeah, and you and I are going to do a show on that. That's guaranteed. Kino Lorber will be releasing the Carpetbaggers, I would guess, in a few months. And
in a few months?
I would think so. I would hope so. It's been announced.
Well, I just did the 4K of Staying Alive with John Travolta, and I'm very proud of that one that I did with my friend Edward King from the Irish Film Institute. We did it which we're in two different countries. But Staying Alive is such a landmark movie for so many people that love Travolta and Saturday Night Fever. So, anyway, I hope people will buy that one, too. And Kino's just knocking it out of the park.
They sure are. They sure are. And so are you, David. As always, I always listen to your commentaries. They're always terrific and fun. And they don't come across, as some do, like dry lectures. They are fun and a blast. So anytime
from you, that's praise indeed.
Well, anytime you in the audience sees commentary by David Del Valle, forget about the movie. Just listen to the commentary because it's got to be even more entertaining than the movie itself. David, I am so grateful for the time you've spent. on the show. I can't wait for our next get-together.
I can't either. I adore doing your show, and I love talking about movies more than anything else. And you know what? I want to just say I'm grateful that we got out of this last couple of years where we were kind of sequestered in our homes, and it's just great to be alive. Let me tell you.
Yes, it's a situation I vastly prefer. So, absolutely. Well, much love, David, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely, my friend.
Well, that's my show for today. DVD Classics Corner on the Air is conceived, written, produced, and directed by me, Double D. And if you'd like to hear some of my older, vintage shows, please go to www.dvdclassicscorner.net, where in addition to the broadcasts, you'll find hundreds of my print reviews of classic DVD releases. So, until next week,
keep well, keep happy, and keep listening.